Yeah. I'm not sure if it's a bit like dairy in humans. You know, some of us can tolerate lactose because we've got the lactase enzyme, and some don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, some can't.
No, exactly. Well, we're officially 3 seconds away from 5 o'clock, so perhaps it'd be nice to get started. Obviously, I can see a few people are coming on as we speak. I'm just going to try and switch this banner off, and I figured it out. There we go. And but yes, anyone who's joining us right now, if you could very kindly introduce yourselves in the chat and say hello. And obviously, we'll be able to see your name, etc. But if you could tell us a little bit about what you do, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Muriel, I think, who we got now? I think we've got Alex with us. Welcome, Alex. I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday. It's a different Alex to the one you and I know, Chris, by the way. But absolutely great. I can see David's joined us. Welcome, David. Lovely to see you here as well. And yeah, in fact, I think I spoke to you earlier on today, didn't I? So yeah, it's always nice speaking to some of our regulars. So let me just bring this up very quickly. So this is what we plan to cover today. We've got the lovely Celynn Morin. I've got that wrong, haven't I? Say that again. I've got that right. Thank you. Right. And I love this title. Absolutely brilliant. Chief Energy Officer. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So, so welcome, Celynn. We're absolutely dying to hear a lot more about you. I've got Muriel with me today, and obviously Chris is co-hosting today and largely leading the interview today, which is fantastic. And moving on a little bit from there, sorry, let me move back to the very beginning. Yeah, so again, for those of you who are joining us right now, if you could very kindly explain a little bit about what you do, why you do it, and what, you know, what's really, how you like to make a difference. So the Simon Sinek stuff, what you fundamentally believe is really important, what really motivates you. If you've got a killer question for Celynn, then do ask that. Don't need to wait for that slot. Just drop those questions in as you think of them, and we'll periodically get to them. And a little bit of an introduction from myself and then Chris and Celynn. I founded Business Growth Bureau about a bit over 6 years ago. One of the things I feel very strongly about is the importance of circular relationships. And that'll become very evident a bit later on in this with something else I'm planning to share. So what I mean by that is rather than a cheap win-win, which a lot of people talk about, it's about trying to think about how you can make everyone feel good with working with you, whether it's be your prospects, your clients, your advocates, your supporters, your associates, your investors, your staff, and so on. If you can try and make all those people who work very closely with you feel very special and important, guess what? They'll actually be there in spades for you when you actually need help and support yourself. And equally, it's a nice way to do business as well. So, Chris, obviously, I'd love to hear about you as well and about your book. So over to you on that one.
Yeah, hi, Chris Cooper, and I help leaders to develop themselves, develop their people and their businesses, and build highly engaged workplaces. That's what I'm really passionate about. Lots of coaching and facilitating and training and kind of blended learning. I'm also host the Business Elevation Show. I have done for 9 years on Voice America. I think I'm as experienced a podcast host as anybody probably in the country. I've done something like 380 hours now of interviews with thought leaders and experts from around the world, and we were the most listened show on the biggest online radio platform last year. So I'm really pleased about that. And I wrote a book, co-authored it, called The Power to Get Things Done, Whether You Feel Like It or Not, which was helped me actually to get a bit more done a few years ago, and that was published by Penguin Random House.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of me living in Leicestershire and rural, just on the outside of the lockdown. Actually, just escaped by 4 or 5 miles, so I can at least get out and about. So,
does that mean if you cycle into it, Chris, you actually are not laid out again?
Well, I don't know. Well, what we are doing is we do go and sort of throw food over the barbed wire fence sometimes. We're not going in at the moment. We're just heading out, really.
No. Thank you. Just before we introduce Celynn properly, or Chris introduces Celynn properly, I just want to, although I'm conscious we missed Muriel last week. Muriel is every business needs a Muriel. Muriel just behind the scenes makes sure everything happens and works perfectly. Anything I create as a mess, she sorts out, and she's absolutely wonderful working with our clients as well. As we've got several clients on the call today, I'm sure you guys will be very pleased to verify that. But so Celynn's, Muriel's going to very kindly monitor the chat with me as well. But also, if any of you have any difficulties, just call Muriel on her mobile number, which, yes, what is your mobile number, Muriel? I can never remember it because of my screen.
It's 07852 I'll type it in chat, shall I? I can't. Can I?
Idea. Yeah, so but Muriel, thank you very much anyway. So if you will, in a moment, I'm going to duck out, so to let Chris take over. So Celynn, if you could give a very quick introduction. Obviously, I know Chris will then want to take it from that point onwards. So could you tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, great. So I'm Celynn Morin. My accent is South African. I was born there and brought up there. However, I now live in the UK. I moved across 3 years ago. And my parents left France to go to South Africa. So the whole of my family live in France. And right. I will talk more about what I do and why when I have the opportunity to do that with Chris.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. So Chris, over to you at this point. Muriel and I will duck out, so I'll stay behind the scenes. So Muriel, you'll see me a bit later on, ladies and gentlemen. So
well, brilliant to be with you and today and talking with you, Celynn, about being your own Chief Energy Officer, which I think is a brilliant title, like Rupert suggested. And we should really thank at this point Nikki Owens, who's our guest next week, and a very good friend of mine who said to me a few weeks ago, you need to meet Celynn, and she's absolutely brilliant at what she does. And you've got an amazing kind of background, haven't you? You've been in this area of well-being for 20 years now, and we've got all these kind of accreditations from all sorts of different organisations. And maybe tell us a little bit about what inspired you to maybe go into this field and not become a doctor, because I've read about you that you'd always had this desire to kind of help and heal and support, but you went down a different route to the medical route. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. I think I always knew from a young child that I was interested in medicine because I was fascinated by anatomy and physiology and chemistry and all things to do with health. And I was brought up in a French household, so very much around the joie de vivre of life and balance and food. And when I looked into different universities that offered medical courses, I remember I was 16 and I came across a brochure talking about dietetics. And dietetics is the mergence of nutrition and food, but with medicine. So I just knew in that moment, this is the course that I wanted to do. So when I finished school, I did 1 year of backpacking around North America and Europe. And then I went to university and studied dietetics.
And so you haven't gone down the. My wife's a medic, a GP, and has kind of had a fairly stressful life at times, sort of dealing with patients. But instead, you've sort of been traveling the world and speaking and writing books. And
although I started for 5 years, I was in clinical practice. I worked within a GP practice with a physiotherapist and a few nurses and a doctor. But of course, Chris, as you know, people don't go to a dietitian for fun. They generally go once something's perhaps wrong, like they have diabetes or an irritable bowel condition or inflammation, or they want to lose weight. And so I found myself feeling as if I was a doctor because I was in the reactive health space and I really wanted to be in the proactive health space. So in 2006, I had an opportunity to work with an insurer that did proactive well-being programs. And I just knew this was my calling. And I started to run workshops and work with executives and leadership teams. And so then I started traveling and doing what I do now.
Yeah. So you've written or co-authored a couple of books. What were they? Were they about?
Sustained Energy, which is all about how to eat well while you're on the go. And then Fab Quotient, which I wrote with the behavioral strategist, Joie Petty.
Yeah. Excellent. So tell us what it, this sort of title of Chief Energy Officer. Why do we need to be our own Chief Energy Officer? And why is it about energy rather than perhaps say time?
I guess it's about energy because time is finite. However, energy isn't. It can be renewed if we do it in the right way. And one of the greatest assets we can have is the ability to mobilize energy on demand. And in a moment, I'd like to talk about different forms of energy. So some people think energy is just about physical energy, like do I feel like working or going out and doing some exercise, but there's also emotional energy. So the ability to be present with loved ones, even if you are physically exhausted or mentally tired. So there's mental energy. And I do feel no matter who you are, whether you are a CEO or you're a father or a mother or anyone trying to live a good life, having as much energy as possible and knowing how to renew it on those different levels, physical, mental, and emotional, is a really good gift to have for yourself.
Yeah.
A great skill, in terms of staying resilient and productive and getting the most out of life. You know, life's quite short.
Yeah, I remember reading, it's probably a dozen years ago now, an article. It was from the Harvard Business Review, and it was entitled "Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time."
Yes, I read that.
Yeah, that had a real impact on me. It really got me to think very differently about how I manage my state during the day and more effective times to work and that sort of thing.
And actually, that study was also into a book called The Corporate Athlete by Tony Schwartz and Jim Lohr.
Yes.
And that also had a profound impact on me because I got hold of that book around about the time that I was moving out of clinical practice into the corporate workspace. And yeah, just like professional athletes train hard and they've got support teams and they understand how important rest is and how to keep their energy, so too do corporate athletes or SMEs or just employees, anybody trying to run this race of life. So a lot of those learnings we can then use in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, and is this about looking at each of us as individuals, or does this also relate to thinking about the whole organization and how you help your organization manage their energy?
Well, it's both, right? I'm yet to see an organization do well if their staff aren't engaged and energized and are quite poorly. And we now know there's just so much research to show that when employees are not just healthy and well, but they've got good energy and they're engaged, that directly impacts bottom line for the better.
Yeah. And is this an alternative to taking lots of pills? The pharmaceutical companies love to sell us medication, don't they? By doing this, do we reduce the need and the requirement for that? Is there?
We can. I wouldn't recommend that anybody listens to this chat and then just goes off their meds and then changes their lifestyle without guidance. But we absolutely know that lifestyle changes can help you manage almost every single condition. And often when we make changes to the way that we move, the way that we breathe, the way that we eat, the way that we think and feel, we can often reduce or potentially come off medication.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about those different elements of well-being then. The different, you mentioned different components of energy.
So if we imagine a pyramid or a triangle with 4 layers, I would put physical energy or physical well-being at the bottom. And your physical well-being relates to your physical body. So it would look at things like what you eat, what you drink, how you rest and sleep, how you move your body, how you exercise, how you perhaps breathe. So the physiological things that we do. And then above that, I would put emotional well-being or your emotional energy, which relates to your heart, your relationship with yourself, your ability to understand your emotions and feelings, to articulate them. So some people speak about EQ, emotional intelligence, also how you relate to others in terms of empathy and being able to communicate. And then the next layer would be mental or intellectual well-being or energy, which is all about this wonderful universe, this brain that we have above our shoulders. So how we think, how we process, how we remember, how we focus, how we use all our executive function, our memory, for instance. And then on top of that would be what I refer to as meaning. You could also call it spiritual dimension or energy. But what it is it's not specifically a religion. It can be for some people. But it's what is your meaning in life? Like, what's your big why? What's your purpose? Your ikigai in Japanese or raison d'être in French. And this pyramid I just described, the reason why I would put physical at the bottom is that if you don't have a solid physical foundation in terms of your well-being, so if you're sleep deprived or you're living with sugar and you're dehydrated, you're probably not going to be able to manage your emotional and mental well-being, and you're not going to think about what's the bigger purpose in my life because you're so dead tired. So that's why I place them in that particular order. And they could also overlap with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we've got basic needs at the bottom, and then that allows us potentially to self-actualize.
Actualize, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great way to think about it. We're not just talking here about staying, going out and doing a run each day or what we eat, we're thinking about other aspects as well.
Exactly. I mean, I've worked with many executives who are, for instance, incredibly fit. You know, they run marathons and they train hard, but they may not have very good EQ, or they may run so much that they end up they get away with maybe drinking a lot of beer and eating not too well. And so, almost all of us, it's good to reflect on, if I think of those 4 dimensions, how would I rate myself? Like 1 out of 10. If 10 was exceptional, I don't think I could do anything more. And 1 being, geez, I really don't feel good about this, you know? So think about your physical well-being just as a gut feel, 1 to 10, your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, and then meaning. And then, and that's just information, right? It can help you just stay curious about, oh, why did I say that about my mental well-being, but not about my emotional well-being?
Yeah. So it's a whole, it's a balance of, or a focus on this system, which can kind of enable you to, I suppose, realize your potential each day through, maximizing the energy that you have available.
Yes.
Because I suppose, you could say, well, we manage our energy, not our time, but actually, okay, we may have energy at certain times of the day, but actually how much we have and how long we can sustain it for depends upon these factors that you're sharing with us today.
Yes, and also depends on energy drains. So it's important to know what renews your energy physically. Like, I know that I feel good when I'm well hydrated, when I eat the best way for my body, when I get the sleep that I need. But I also know emotionally, if I choose to get pulled into social media and I start feeling anger or frustration early in the day, I'm going to be mentally and emotionally exhausted by midday. So it's also to ask yourself, not just, am I able to renew myself on those levels, but also, am I being careful of where the drains are and when?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot of us are working really hard. And I think now with remote working and all the changes we're seeing, the boundaries are very blurred between when work ends and the other part of our life begins.
Yeah.
It's so important to not just work and then not have energy left for that part of our life that really matters. Our families, our hobbies, our own personal self-actualization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite amusing. I was chatting with my wife this morning. She was a friend of hers has finally cut off somebody on Facebook who's draining her energy. One of these people whose life's brilliant and have this wonderful life, and there's all these glitzy pictures of the family, and my wife's been saying, no, just cut her off, and she's cut her off. And my life's changed. I've got so much more energy. I'm not feeling stressed anymore. I'm not trying to live up to being something I'm not. And it's just that little thing.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about. We'll talk about your Wellculator in a moment. But you mentioned about purpose, and I know meaning is very important as well. So tell us. Let's talk a little bit more about purpose and meaning. And I guess this is the why. Rupert talks about this every week. The why, but that can really give us lots of energy, can't it? If we know what that is, but.
Absolutely. I mean, whenever I run my masterclasses or workshops, I generally always get people to reflect on, I can easily tell you what to do for well-being. And in fact, a lot of what we're going to chat about today it's not rocket science. I mean, we know the basics about managing our well-being. However, common knowledge is not common practice. So that's what we need to discuss is, in the context of our busy lives, why is it always easy to do what we know is right for us? And then when you have a strong enough reason why, it generally becomes easier to find a how. So understanding why you want to look after your well-being, for some of us, it might be because we want to have more energy to be playful with young grandkids, or we want to be able to think clearly and focus and be able to take our businesses to the next level. For others, it may be because we want to just feel good. We might want to lose a bit of weight and stay fit to feel strong. But knowing your why and having a strong vision of what you look like at your most well is important. So an exercise I often do is I get people to reflect on this question. If anything were possible, what could your well-being look like? So if anything were possible, what would your well-being look like actually? And then we usually spend 2 or 3 minutes listening to a piece of music, and, intuitively, something will come up. And it's lovely to start building on, that's the vision, that's the person I want to be. And that's the why.
Yeah. Renato's asked a question here, which I think will link in beautifully as well with the interview next week with Nikki, because we're going to share something special next week that Nikki has created, which even what's his name? The footballer Kane. He's a fan of this system. But Renato says, as CEO, do you see the energy comes from within you, or as I see as an alternative medicine healer, you are channeling the energy around you to achieve what needs to be done?
I think it's a bit of both. So we have metabolic energy that comes from ourselves. And I know a lot of people who don't harness that. So they end up relying on coffee and energy drinks and external stimulus, which is not healthy. That's not sustainable. That's why we end up getting to burnout, because we just overstimulate ourselves, not from an internal place that's renewable. But absolutely, you know, that question, I love it. I mean, in the past, that would seem a bit woo-woo. But there is a collective energy. And likewise, there can also be a collective drain. So like Chris, you mentioned, you know, that person who you had to cut off from, and then you notice the difference. If you've got the right kind of energy around you and in your organization, I do believe in the emergence effect, where 1 and 1 and 1 then doesn't just make 4. It's the equivalent of perhaps 10 human beings producing and optimizing at their best.
Yeah, when people are like that, it's like an electricity, isn't there? But then there's somebody who's an atmosphere hoover, as we used to call them at college, and you can walk past them, can't you? And the whole vibrational energy around you kind of shifts. You don't even need to look at them to know they've come into the room.
And we can't change everybody, and everybody has a right to choose, you know, how they're going to be in terms of their own well-being and how they show up. But what I do know, and what some of the science is showing, is that you have the ability to impact others around you. So if you are, for instance, in a high heart coherent state, so you're feeling a high vibrational emotion like joy or gratitude, you can and will impact the people around you. So be the person that does that rather than relying on getting the good vibes from somebody else.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think what you're describing, when you're, I know when I'm in my best sort of state, more ideas seem to percolate. You know, I don't know where they're coming from sometimes, and sometimes they almost seem to come through me for people. And I think, you know, where did that come from? But it was a lovely quote once. I read in a book by Charles Barker on the power of decision, and he said that ideas are seeking for a home. They're looking for you as much as you're looking for them, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, Martha Beck has written a book about that specific idea. That ideas do look for a home, and that's why sometimes you'll think about something, think you're the only one who's thought about it, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of other people doing the same thing.
Yeah. So tell us about the Wellculator. What's the Wellculator? What are its components?
Well, I believe the Wellculator was an idea that came and was birthed through me. So it's an assessment of lifestyle habits that helps you ensure a solid physical foundation. So at the base of that pyramid that I spoke about, generally, if you follow the 10 or so aspects in the Wellculator assessment, it's a good place to start to ensure that you've got a good physical well-being.
And is this something that people can access, so they can do it, you know, with?
So it's on my website as an assessment. I've also got a book that I finalized today that will be available next week on my website. Oh, wow. And that will be a freebie that I put together, because I've had a lot of people ask me where they can find the Wellculator. So I put it together with my top. There's 10 tips per point, so there's over 100 practical tips that you can take and put into place. And you wouldn't put 100 things in place in one go. You would do one thing at a time. And we'll talk about that when we speak about the ABC of behavior change.
Yeah.
But so the Wellculator assessment is also a framework that I use in most of my presentations and workshops, because it doesn't matter who you are. You know, you could be a C-suite leader. You could be somebody who's working from home, a youngster, a retired person. As humans, we have basic fundamental needs around hydration, sleep, and nutrition. And so it looks at those basic things and helps you see, okay, what's my score, and where could I potentially be doing, you know, paying more attention or making some tweaks and improving.
Yeah, good call. I'm just looking at a comment from Nikki Wild here. I'm a big advocate of managing energy. When I take on new business coaching clients, I ask about their 3 key budgets: their time, energy, and money. All 3 need managing.
Great question to ask. Yeah, and what a good leader to even think about that, because you want people that are energized rather than, you know, just doing too much or not even thinking about that. Yeah,
you need people who are going to bring that extra dimension at times, and also be, you know, but we have to realize, though, don't we, that, you know, life has its ups and downs, and there's you know, we all go through those periods when we're not, you know, necessarily high in energy, and sometimes, you know, being with others can bring us out of that, can't it? So
I'm just going to say that it's you know, even though I mean I'm not always energized. I mean, I do have a certain joie de vivre, which comes from this blessing that I do what I love. So for me, even the hard parts of my job are not hard because I have a compelling why. You know, I'm here to enrich the quality of people's lives through holistic well-being, and it's a privilege to do what I do. But I also have days where I'm not as energized, perhaps emotionally or mentally. And then I've got mentors and friends and the right kind of people that I can tap into. And exactly to your point, if a team understands the energy and we speak and we're open and there's vulnerability and trust, we can then help one another, especially considering the times that we're going through. Like we've never been here. This is territory that's unknown. There's no roadmap. So we absolutely should be there for each other.
Yeah. I always remember a good friend of mine, David Heiner, who's a very prolific speaker, if you know David. And I always remember David saying to people, and he said this to me as well, I said, you know, if you warm up when you get on that stage, I'm going to kick your butt. You know, you need to be in that state before you get on stage, not warm up with the audience. You know, you need to be on it when you. So I suppose it's there are certain situations and times where we need to manage our state, don't we, to enable us to be, you know, the best we can be in those key moments.
And I think a big question around energy has been this whole Zoom fatigue and online exhaustion that people have, because this is not natural. Like it's not as easy for us to produce oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical, or, you know, it's exhausting to constantly see yourself in a little block and just relate to the screen rather than being in person. So I've also had quite a few clients ask me to help around that topic. Like, how do we manage our energy when we have this online exhaustion? So it's lovely to see that as lockdown shifts potentially, that we can spend less time online. Although I think going forward, a lot of us are going to see a lot more remote working, which inevitably does mean being online.
Yeah.
Again, there's one of the points in the Wellculator is about activating your body during your workday. So being conscious of how you can strategically move to manage your energy is something that to me is a non-negotiable. Like at the moment I'm standing because I want my energy to come across quite strongly, and it's the end of the day and I've been sitting and working a lot today. So those are small things. And I don't have a fancy desk. I'm working off my ironing board. So it's we'll have to spend lots of money, you know. It's you know, create your own sit-stand desk at home.
Yeah. Yes, good idea, that standing.
Yeah.
You don't get too comfortable, do you? You just
kind
of on it. I would struggle with that association though with ironing though. That would that might not help my energy. I think. So tell us a little bit more about some of the key points then within Wellculator. Some of the key areas that when we do this survey, it seems a bit of a no-brainer to me. I'm going to go and access it and do it. What are some of the things the components that we're going to discover and consider? And by the way, I love that point. Common knowledge is not common practice. So, you know, I imagine there's things on here that are probably, you know, fairly straightforward and obvious, but we just don't think about them and we forget about them. Yeah.
Yeah, because well-being and the Wellculator itself is not a question of intelligence. Because if it was, many, many more of us would be healthier, slimmer, fitter, happier. But we aren't, because we are stress rich and time poor. So we have very stressful lives, and that does impact how much resources and energy we have left to think about ourselves. However, now, and I think especially even in the context of this global pandemic, words like immunity and rest and recovery are actually becoming much more higher on the list, even in business speak, which is really cool for me to see. Yeah. So if we look at the Wellculator, I would say, let's start with my passion area, which is food and nutrition. So I study dietetics, and I'm also French, which means I love food, and I believe strongly in whatever approach you take to eat. It needs to be one that's informed. So find out about what your body needs, and you can do that through various tests. You can even do genetic testing now called nutrigenomics, which is where we look at the link between your nutrition and your genetics. So you can really fine-tune a blueprint for you. Like, I know that I need extra magnesium, a certain vitamin B, and I know that certain vegetables are good for my liver. And I found that out by doing 1 or 2 tests, and then speak to a nutritionist or a dietitian. Just like you would go to a physio or a chiro or personal trainer if you wanted to get a bespoke exercise plan. or you go to your accountant or a financial, expert for investing advice. Do the same for nutrition. Speak to an expert, a dietitian, and get some personalized guidance for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. By complete and utter coincidence, I've got my laptop rested on this book, and I hope you don't mind me sharing it. But if I can lift it, because it's quite a tome, and it's actually called Boundless. I don't know if you've come across that one.
I haven't. I like that.
It really is some piece of work by a guy called Ben Greenfield. But if I was to follow this book, I think I probably would die fairly quickly from taking too many supplements and bits and pieces, because it's some brilliant stuff in there, but there is an awful lot of take this and take that and try this and try that, and how you access it all, I'm not really quite sure. But I kind of wonder where the line is with this, because with supplements and
some people, that's great. I know that's not my approach. I think because of my French heritage, I feel quite strongly in trying to get as much as you can from food and natural means. And I also appreciate that today, because of the stress that we're exposed to, because of the fact that we take medicines, because we have a dysbiosis in our gut, so our gut microbiome is not balanced anymore, because we're exposed to toxins and pollution, we do have an increased need. So there is, for some of us, a potential to benefit from taking supplements. But then again, you don't want to just walk into any pharmacy or jump online and then spend, $100 or $200 a month. Speak to somebody first. Do some tests. Like, don't just take vitamin D. Check your vitamin D levels, because you may not need it. Yeah. And then don't just take omega-3 because everyone's saying that's an essential fatty acid. Because if you eat a portion of salmon twice a week, you don't need to take a omega-3. So yeah, get the right kind of advice. And I've always felt my approach to be more balanced as opposed to tyrannical or too pure. Yes, being vegetarian is good for the planet, and I guess because of Parma ham, I'll struggle to be a vegan, because once in a while I'm going to eat some Parma ham. So that's the approach that works for me and what I like to share with my clients.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I went to a low meat diet from Christmas, and I only eat a little bit. But some people could say, "Oh, you're vegetarian or you're vegan." I say, "Well, no, I just
part-time.
Yeah, if I want it, I'll eat a little bit, but actually I'm eating a lot less than I used to, and I'm really happy with that, and found it much easier than just stopping it altogether.
And on that point, I speak about something called loss aversion. So as humans, we have a cognitive bias, like we don't like to lose out. So instead of saying I'm going to cut out something, rather think about what's missing and what do you need to add in. So most of us could benefit from, I call it the second point on the Wellculator is, do you eat like an artist? Which means, do you have a lot of color on your plate? And color does not come from M&Ms and wine gums, or color comes from vegetables, fruits, fresh produce. And we should be eating between 8 and 12, so about 10 portions, and a portion is a tennis ball size or my fistful of those colorful foods a day. So rather focus on that. Like, how can I, in a way that's quick and easy and convenient, at most of my meals and in my snacks, bring in more color, and that will automatically displace some of the stuff that you maybe don't want to eat, like meat or starch or bread and things like that. So add in rather than take away. And if there's one thing that you do around your diet, it's to eat like an artist, because we get lots of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and bioactive compounds from those foods. And they give us fiber, which is very good for our gut. And your gut is the first place that you should be looking at if you want to boost your immunity. So don't just pop a vitamin C tablet and then you're not eating fiber. So boost your gut health, and then you potentially could boost your overall immunity by a lot.
Excellent. Excellent. I remember that. Eat like an artist. I remember having a lovely conversation once. I had a privilege to sit down for 20 minutes and talk to Bobby Charlton. I don't know if you may know him. He was a footballer in our World Cup squad, and he was telling me how much he loves Skittles, which is lots of colours. I worked for Mars at the time.
There's no fibre in Skittles.
No fibre in Skittles, no. Yeah, not good for your teeth. I remember I came out, joined Mars with no fillings, and came out with quite a few 7 years later. I think I had one for each year I worked there, so I've cut that down a little bit since. But I think that's a really good point. Eat like an artist. Let's just so what basically we do this Wellculator. and out of it, we kind of score ourselves, do we, and get some kind of a total.
So generally, when I use the Wellculator as part of a framework, you know, I can take people through it, and then you give yourself 1 point or half a point, and there's a lot of banter because we can't take ourselves too seriously here. I mean, part of managing your well-being, and the last question on the Wellculator is, do you understand your stress response, and are you able to regulate it? So well-being and health can sometimes add more stress, and we don't want to do that. Our lives are busy and stressful enough. We want to soothe the stress. So we want to stay curious and compassionate. And most people, when they score themselves on the Wellculator, the average generally is between 4 and 5 out of 10, in my experience. So yes, there's one or two people sometimes that have a score of 8 or 9. Generally, the average is about 4 or 5. So what that does is it gives you, okay, so where did I answer no? And where did I answer yes that I could potentially build on? So that whole concept of play to your strengths. You know, if you are getting enough sleep, is there a way that you could ensure even deeper sleep? Could you maybe bring in mindfulness or meditation so you can deepen your ability to rest and recover? Do you get the idea? So work on your strengths and then look at potentially what are the areas where I could improve, and make it easy. Like set yourself up for success. That's why New Year's resolutions and that going on diets don't work. I mean, the first 3 letters of the word diet.
Yeah.
But no more beer, no more bread, no more
slowly, yeah.
It's not sustainable. Like, so whatever change you make, ideally you want to stick at it until your last breath. You don't want to come off the strategy. That's a bit like being a business owner, finding a wonderful strategy that's going to give you great ROI, and then once you get the results, you just completely stop doing what you were doing, because then, you know, you may not sustain those results.
Yeah. Somebody from Facebook, we don't know what their name is unless it's Facebook user, and that would be pretty unusual. I said that I believe that your gut is linked to your brain.
Correct. Take the rest of the day off, whoever that is on Facebook. The gut is linked to the brain, and the more we discover about this, I mean, this is a whole topic on its own, but the gut has got its own nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system that speaks directly to the brain. And we studied a lot around the brain and the heart. And now that we're studying the gut, so we have head, heart, and gut, we're now beginning to understand, wow, just how interconnected they are. And a big part of the gut-brain story is the bacteria that live in your gut, that microbiome. So if they are balanced, you've got more chance of a healthy gut-brain connection. However, because of antibiotics, medication, poor diets, and stress, many of us do not have a very healthy microbiome or bacteria in our gut. And that's why we could see problems. There's even a link with depression and anxiety and mental health issues and gut issues, because serotonin and dopamine are chemicals that you may have heard of that are important for the brain, but they start in the gut. And via the vagus nerve, there's this whole system that is interconnected. It's fascinating.
Excellent, because we got comments flooding in all over the place at the moment. We got somebody from Splendid Engineering. I think he's a gentleman. I think he's been on before. I'm very strong in the area of taking a nap when I need it. I've become a master. That's what I do when I can to re-energize. That's a good.
Spoken like a true engineer. I love that. Power nap is such an incredible tool to have in your resilience toolkit. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of work in the area of sleep. So, for instance, tonight after this call, I'm doing part 4 of a mini series on sleep. And power napping is one of the things that you can use to help if you're not getting enough sleep or if you're feeling a bit tired in the afternoon. It's way better than having a double espresso. I tell you that.
Yeah. I know from experience what a direct effect your diet has on your physiology and well-being, says William Mason, has to be a serious and structured component of your conscious lifestyle. Good point. So let's talk about, there's some lovely information here, and we've got this Wellculator, which can help us probably identify that maybe we're not quite as good as we thought we were at managing our energy, and there's some opportunities to close some gaps potentially to improve. But what do we do in terms of instilling new habits? Because you mentioned like the diet there, and the first 3 letters suggest that you're going to die slowly if you just keep on sitting on a diet. Is there a have you got an approach to help people instill these new habits so they follow through and get things done?
I do. And I am speaking from experience because I've been helping people change habits this will be my 21st year. And the biggest mistake we make is we try and do too much too fast.
Yeah.
So start small. In fact, start tiny. So there's a professor called B.J. Fogg, who's from Stanford University, who's got a whole concept called tiny habits and written a book. And, you know, he validates how the smaller your new behaviors or new habits are, the more likely you are to create that positive momentum and keep them in place. So an example, if you drink maybe, you know, 4 or 5 cups of coffee and not much water, and you think, you know, that's a quick win. Don't go from drinking not much water to trying to do, you know, 8 or 10 glasses a day and cutting out all your coffee. Set a tiny new habit, like with my first cup of coffee, I will have 1 glass of water. So that's the goal. With my morning cup of coffee, I will have 1 glass of water. That's quite easy to do, because that's, and then when you do that, you're probably going to feel quite good, because you're going to be, I set the goal to have 1 glass of water with my morning coffee, and I've done it. And then ideally in that moment, you should recognize that you've done it, because we change more when we feel good than when we feel bad. The carrot versus the stick. The carrot tends to always change behavior more. So catch yourself doing it, feel good about it, and then you've achieved your goal. And you do that often enough. You do that for the next week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. Chances are you'll start having a second or third glass of water with other cups of coffee, and then automatically drink less coffee because now you've displaced it. But that's how you start setting and implementing new behaviors. Start small, link them to something that you already do. Like when I have my morning coffee, I'll have the glass of water. Or when I switch off my morning alarm, I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Or when I dish up my dinner, I will put the color on my plate first. Try and find an anchor. So something that you already do. And then add in the new behavior and keep it 100% chance that you'll do it. So keep it as simple and easy as possible. And then celebrate doing it. And that's ABC. Anchor, behavior, celebration.
Excellent. I like that. I wrote my book with a clinical psychologist from Minnesota who'd seen thousands of patients, worked at a very big hospital, senior person in that environment. But he'd met so many people who, you know, had come for help around diet or stopping smoking or you know, obesity, and they would say, yes, I'm going to give up now. You know, you really inspired me to do it, and they would come along and nothing had really changed. Which inspired him to get in and write, you know, how start to write and research and understand scientifically how to you know, just to get people to do the things they needed to, whether they wanted to or not. So I think
ultimately, I mean, even myself, I have mentors that help me. So that's why actually in August I'm launching. It's called the Wellbeing Clubhouse, which will be the Wellculator as a framework, and then there's a lot of online resources. But the important bit is the community. So I will have regular monthly, bi-monthly check-ins and masterclasses, because we change when we are witnessed and when there's accountability.
You need accountability, don't you? You do. You're right. Yeah. You need witness, and
if you really want to change your health and well-being, is get a buddy, pay an expert, join a club, you know, rather than just having the idea in your head, because you're the easiest person to let down when you're feeling tired or when it's raining or when you just feel like another piece of chocolate.
Yeah. Also create a situation that will do the heavy lifting for you.
Yes.
Yeah, such that you can't wiggle out of it. You've whether you feel like it or not, you know, other people are really helpful in that, aren't they? And to hold you to account and and create situations where actually you can look a bit foolish if you don't follow through with what you want to do. Perhaps whatever it works for you, though, you've got to create your own strategies, haven't you? Something that will work for you.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
So we've you know, been through your Wellculator. I mean, are we going to need to sort of change when we identify? We've got 4 out of 10. We thought we were probably going to be 6 or 7. So we're identifying a number of different areas that we need to work on. What's the best strategy to move forward? Do we take 6 or 7 areas, or do we focus on one?
One. That's even when I work with, you know, what I want to label CEOs as high achievers, but, you know, I do a lot of work with leadership style groups. And they often want to change, you know, well, their scores are 4 out of 10. So why can't they go to 10 out of 10? Because they can eat vegetables and drink water and get to bed an hour earlier and go and train. No. It's very few of us will sustain that. So pick one, and pick one that sparks joy. I don't know. I mean, you might have heard of Marie Kondo. She does that whole cleaning declutter technique, and she speaks about, keep things that make you feel good. And the same with health and well-being is start with the things that make you feel good, so that when it gets to the big things, like maybe quitting smoking, which is not always that easy, you've got quick wins, and you start changing your identity. So you become a person that is healthier. You start living into that identity of, I am somebody who switches my phone off an hour before I go to sleep. I am somebody who takes time in the morning to have a cup of tea looking out the window rather than jumping onto Instagram or answering emails. And so start with the small wins that make you feel good and spark joy, and then build on those. And get accountability, and ideally join a tribe that you connect to.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I've loved talking to you today, and I apologise that I've been freezing a little bit for some people. It's the bandwidth here in the middle of rural Leicestershire, I'm afraid. But hopefully you've got the message, and let Celynn do most of the talking, because she's got full of absolute brilliant wisdom and ideas. It's been great talking to you. I will be going and doing the Wellculator myself and seeing how I can improve, because it's a really important area, and I think we need all the energy at the moment that we can access to enable us to really, really move forward well. So, so thank you very much. I know Rupert showed me a little nudge. He wants to get on and do the next sort of bits that he wants to do, but thank you. Oh, has he gone? Oh, yeah. He's there.
Yeah, dear. I love that name, the Wellculator. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. I just realised it's gone as red as a beetroot, by the way. It isn't my face. It's actually, we changed our LED lighting in this room a few weeks ago, and it's a different temperature, which has thrown out all the colour buttons. So anyway, never mind. So we've moved that way as well. But the Wellculator, a brilliant name. What gave you the idea of that name? So that's
a very dear friend a school friend of mine, Robbie Kuyetin, and I were brainstorming one day, and maybe we channeled it, Chris, to, as we started our conversation, we spoke about collective energy. Together, him and I came up with it.
Well, I think that's really, really good. I think the nice thing as well is it's a pretty unique name, isn't it? It's going to be very difficult for someone else to call what they do a Wellculator. So, yeah, I think the spelling is WELLCULATOR, is that right?
Correct. So it's calculator and well instead of kel.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. Thank you very much for sharing that one. So just let me just bring back, you can see it there. That's obviously brilliant. I have to look between different screens, so hence we see mine's going in different places. Just a few things I'd like to say. A big thank you as well to Celynn, and obviously Chris did a brilliant job interviewing as always. So thank you very much for that. We always like to share a few other insights as well. So, for example, in the last few weeks, we've been focusing on some good news as well as some things which have been going out there which haven't been so positive. But I think there's a few good, better things, slightly better news coming around in a number of respects, which is always good to share. But also someone who's, in the nicest possible way, very occasionally a bit as mad as a hatter. I think Chris and I would probably agree on that one. Also has to be someone who's a good friend I happen to really like. But Alex Smith, who's basically is trying to raise £2,300 for Mind, the charity. I helped him as a driver. I have to say I didn't climb, but about 2 years ago, up to with the 3 peaks. And as a consequence, through his energetic energy that he's got within himself, he managed to complete all 3 peaks within 20 hours, 50 minutes. It was helped by brilliant weather and very clear M6, by the way. But this time around, he wants to be completely mad and go up the 3 peaks with a 23-kilogram log. He's telling me he wants to do more than that, but I think everyone's trying to suggest a little bit of common sense would be a good idea, because we don't really want him falling off the edge of a mountain. But he feels really passionate about Mind the charity, and I think at this point in time we'd all agree that it's very, very, everything Mind's all about is very topical. I think a lot of us have been suffering with COVID and the isolation that brings. I've only spoken to 2 clients this week, actually, who obviously remain nameless, but they themselves have found it really tough at a personal level. So I think good on Alex for doing that. What I hadn't realised was that a bit of a depressing subject, but it's worth us mentioning for a second. But amongst suicide amongst 45s is particularly high, and it's apparently 75% of men. which I hadn't realised. I knew it was higher with men than women, but I hadn't realised to what extent. And the point that Alex makes, it's okay not to be okay. I think we need to acknowledge that. And clearly, we've talked about COVID already. In effect, it's a bit of a ticking time bomb because, yes, things are being eased up a little bit now, but, you know, we only need to have a second or a third wave, especially in the winter time, you know, and when it's dark, you know, cold evenings, longer nights than days, you know, we need to be very strong for ourselves. And something Alex wants to do is to demonstrate if the world is on top of you or us, we can push through. I know that Neil Lawson and also David Fox-Pitt and Farron Jury and Jessica in previous weeks, for example, have talked about this a lot, and also Michael Romling. And for others to understand the first and last battle is in our minds, we have to fight through. So what I've done to make it easier, because obviously the trouble with Just Giving pages, you end up with this horrible URL at the end, which no one remembers. But hopefully when people do remember businessgrowthbureau.com. So if you just add /mind on the end, that goes to a Just Giving page. We're very keen to support Alex. And what he's set out a goal is, broadly speaking, no amount, large or small, it doesn't make any difference what the amount is, but in his mind, he's worked out that if 100 people donate £23 each, £2,300, makes a lot of sense. Obviously, some people can put 2 or 3 quid, a fiver, others might be able to put a bit more, but if you're up for joining on that, we'd love to do it. We'll be sort of featuring this a bit until he does the challenge, but hopefully that'll be in the end of the first week of August.
And if any of you hits that total, Rupert, are you going to do it with 2 logs next year?
I couldn't do it with 1.
I don't think you could do it with 1 between us, Rupert.
I do not have a head for heights either, which is not. I need a good hypnotist, I think, to help me with that one. Especially, I think one of those he did at night time as well, which there's no way I could do that and not feel or see what's in front of me. It'd be horrendous. But there we go. Yes, so and actually the year he went, I had a drone at the time, so I didn't manage to get a drone footage. It was quite fun, but anyway. A little bit of an announcement as well. We teased people a little bit on this last week, but starting next week, the Look Forward Thursdays are something that's a permanent fixture with what we're doing. Chris has been amazingly supportive of this, and I'm very grateful. We've had some really lovely guests on as well as Celynn, of course, a perfect example of that. And it's about sharing value. And believe me, at this time, I think people need all the help and encouragement they can get. So very grateful for our guests. But the BizGrowth Supercharged Tuesdays is something quite different. I don't know about you. For example, yesterday, I spoke to Wendy in the evenings, my wife, and to her son. And I literally think started at 6 in the morning. I think I finished at 9. And throughout the day, I was on Zoom probably for nearly 9 hours in total. Which was a bit much, even for me. I'm quite used to Zoom. And of course, I had to go out for a walk and do something afterwards. But I mean, it's also a fantastic technology. But one of the things, with a lot of modern technologies, it's very, very two-dimensional. And I think what really brought this home to me was a few weeks ago when Barnaby did his session, which is a brilliant session. And one of the comments I said to Barnaby afterwards is I loved the way he was incredibly animated. To the extent he got his props, he was throwing at the screen and all this type of stuff. But the thing is, Zoom is nothing wrong with Zoom, it's fantastic, but it's a very two-dimensional technology. What I want to do is I want to give people a real opportunity to get together, network and collaborate. So what we've done is found something which enables us to almost create this 3-dimensional effect. It's not 3D, but in effect, you can join in on virtual tables, you can network, you can join other tables. And the format for that, broadly speaking, is that it'll be about 20, 30 minutes of pure networking, meeting others through a facilitated arrangement, a 30-minute value share session, and then there'll be like a collaboration slot as well. People can share ideas, tips, what they've learned, and so on. So we're starting the next Tuesday. It's a way of creating virtual networking online and collaboration online. The first 4 times people can join us for free. And obviously it's the education slot is non-pitch based. It is about focused around growing you and your business. And the object of these sessions is to have fun in a safe way and obviously be able to do business. So what we want to do is be able to adapt to the new world order, seize the moment, and encourage everyone to engage. So do keep on coming on the Thursdays. That's a big value share. Lots of value share on Tuesday. Very different theme. And I will warn everyone here. We did do an experiment about 8 weeks ago with a lovely guest called Steve Hyland. It was a bit of a car crash. No fault of Steve, by the way. Steve Hyland was absolutely brilliant. We actually tried merging two platforms together, and we boxed too smart, or I boxed too smart. It's entirely my fault. But interestingly enough, by the time we had edited down a few bits and left a few bits in there just for a bit of fun, it actually was a really good slot. Now, next week is going to be, next Tuesday is going to be either brilliant or it's going to be a slight car crash. Either way, you're going to have fun, okay? So do join in if that's what you'd like to do. And just to also touch on, or not touch on, but explain our lovely guests we've got next week. Nikki and Celynn are good friends. She's going to be talking about breathing space transforms your results. She's got an amazing story to tell. I do not want to let on anything about her story because it would totally spoil it, okay? But you're in for a treat next week. I know Celynn's smiling, so is Chris, because they know what it's all about. But she's going to be talking about the link between cellular biology, mindset, and behavior, why you might be contaminating your results, how the best companies and leaders today are accessing transformational information, how to bring effortless ease into the working day, and one vital element that creates integrated, empowering changes. And actually, I know we've got Alex on this call today, a different Alex, by the way, who's actually been involved with managing over 6,000 people with IBM. I'm sure that Alex would find that fascinating. I'm certainly really interested to learn more about what Nikki's got to say. And then sort of finally from there, sorry, just a couple of tiny bits, and we'll hand things back to Chris and so Nikki, and Celynn in just a moment. For those of you who are not sure how to gain access to these future events, obviously a number of you already registered today. Well, you obviously registered today. So to access the live streams, you go in the same way as normal via the website. You click on, actually I haven't realized how fuzzy the screen has become, but you click on basically the events drop down on the menu. There's two buttons. So you can either choose to book in, well, you could choose to book in both the live stream on Thursday, like we're doing now, or you can choose to book in BizGrowth Breakthrough Tuesdays. When you get to that part and book in your thing, you've got the option to either choose continue, in which case it books you in for one event, or you can choose recurring, and you can book in multiple events. That saves you having to register each week. So do that if that's something you'd like to do. And just moving on a little bit from there, fundamentally, you know, obviously we're streaming through Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope today. If you're enjoying this, do feel you'd like to share if you want to do so amongst your network. Obviously, we want to get this message out there so people can benefit from everything that's sort of going on out there. And as you know, these platforms are fantastic, but they give you extended reach once they can see extended traction. So do that if you're happy to do so. These are the contact details for Celynn and Chris and myself. And for the Just Giving page for Alex, it's again at the bottom there. I'll leave that up for a moment or two, but I think Chris and Celynn, we may have got some closing comments, questions. So perhaps what I'll do is I'll bring the three of us up again, if I can do that. There we go. Move over to that side a bit. So let's have a quick pick up here and just see whether there's a few things that we can pick up on straight away. So yeah, Pradeep, thank you very much for your feedback on that. I think the passion that came across was fantastic today, as always. And Renato's showing a little bit of a story here as well. Lovely, thank you very much, Renato. Pradeep, thank you very much again. I enjoyed it. Nice few little comments here. And we've got, I'm not sure who that is. Actually, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know, I'm afraid. Okay, and I think that's pretty well it, unless anyone else has got some questions they'd like to finally ask. Celynn, is there anything you would like to share as far as today is concerned, or Chris, is there anything you would like to say as a closing set of comments or remarks?
I'd like to show you this. Have you seen one of these before?
No. What is it?
Yeah. So like, I think it's called Dharma doll. It's from Japan. And what you do is, if you've got an intention, so it might be that you decide when you do the Wellculator, there's something there that you're going to focus on, is you colour the eye in and you let it look at you until you are able to, with honesty, colour in the other eye because you've achieved what you wanted to achieve. So I think it's kind of quite fun.
Well, thank you very much, Chris.
I'm sorry to say that.
I always love these little tidbits. They're fantastic. So, what would you like to share? Is there anything else you can think to add today, or perhaps seeing some of the comments come here? Have you got any other thoughts you'd like to close with today?
Yeah, I'd like to remind people to celebrate, and not just the big things, to celebrate the small things. You know, my parents are from the Champagne region in France. Champagne is symbolic of celebration, but we often only open champagne for weddings and birthdays. Every day we should celebrate and have a champagne moment. You know, express gratitude. It makes you feel good. It's good for your emotional, mental, and your physical health and well-being. Have fun. Just remember to laugh every now and again. Don't take yourself too seriously.
Thank you. I need to particularly listen to that one. So thank you very much on that sort of fantastic session today. Thanks to Chris and Celynn and everyone who's taken part today. Fantastic. Really appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
One little point before we go. If anyone in advance of next week, this has been absolutely brilliant and sets Nikki up as well to take another layer next week to look at this. And we could let you just experience it next week. But if anyone's interested, you go to mybreathingspace.com. You could do one of Nikki's kind of guided experiences for free. We'll let you have a look at that and have a go. I know, Renato, you might find this really fun to do. I actually worked with it for 2 weeks and thought it was fantastic. So it was mybreathingspace.com, I think, is the website. And then you have a bit of experience before we talk about it next week. You'll have loads more questions to ask. So I thought I'd just share that. But brilliant, Celynn. Thank you very much.
And also, if anybody wants to reach out to me on social media, they can find me. My name is spelled very differently, so I'm the only one.
Yeah, there we go. There are the details again for anyone who would like to pick up on that. Actually, just also we can just type that name into LinkedIn, because the spelling is rather unusual. You'll find Celynn straight away. So absolutely brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining in today. Big thank you, and we will see you next Thursday. Take care, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.